There is a nail in the wall by the front door of my father's house. It is at shoulder height on him, which means it is too high for me, and it was too high for him too by the end, because the stroke took some of him away. I want to tell you about that nail, and about a blue ring binder that sat on the shelf underneath it for the whole of my father's dying, and about the letter my brother's solicitor sent me a few weeks after we buried him. The letter did not use my name once. It called me our client's sister, which is true, and it is the warmest thing in it. I looked after our father for 44 months. My brother is a quantity surveyor. He costs things. That is not a joke I am making about him. It is genuinely his profession, and when he sat down to work out what those years of mine were worth, he arrived at a number, and the number was negative. This is that story. We were not a difficult family. I want that on the record early, because people assume there must have been something rotting under it for years, and there was not. My mother, Eileen, died first. My father lived on his own in that house for a good while afterwards, and he managed, in the way men of that generation manage. Badly for the best part of a year, and then quite well. He worked the whole of his working life at a paint factory on the industrial estate, and he never once described his job to us as anything other than the paint place. He had a shoehorn, long-handled brass, the sort you get given at a retirement due and then use every day for the rest of your life. It hung on that nail by the door, and he put his shoes on sitting on the bottom stair, and when he was done he stood up and hung it back without looking, because after enough years your hand knows where the nail is. That is the whole of what I have to say about the shoehorn for now. It is not important. I am only telling you because I still hear it. There are 3 of us. Gareth is the oldest. Nuala is the youngest. I am the one in the middle, which I have come to think is less a position in a family than a job description. Gareth was always the capable one, and I mean that as a compliment because it was true for a very long time before it stopped being. He was the one who read the small print on things. He came to Mum's funeral with a printed order of service and a folder of paperwork, and he did not cry. And at the time I thought that was him holding us up, and I still half think it. Nuala moved down near Reading in her 20s and stayed. She rang Dad on Sundays. That was the arrangement and nobody objected to it. Dad had the stroke on an ordinary Tuesday at the back end of winter. Left side, and his speech for a fortnight, though the speech came back most of the way. I moved in the week after. I had a flat I was renting and a job I liked, and I did what I think a lot of people do in the first week, which is not decide anything, just start. The district nurse was called Jackie. She looked at me over the top of the bed she was building and said, "You'll be the daughter staying then." I said yes. In that first week she set the house up, the bed downstairs in the front room, the frame, the commode, all of it. And she put a blue ring binder on the shelf in the hall with a biro on a string, and she said everyone who comes in signs it. I said, "Family as well?" She said, "Everyone. Time in, time out. It is not a test, it is so the next one through the door knows what has already been done." Gareth was the one who made us all take the folder seriously. He came early on, and he stood in that hall and said that if we were doing this, we did it properly, and that meant the book got filled in every single time, by everybody, no exceptions. I have thought about that sentence more than any other sentence in this story. He never wore a proper shoe again after that winter. Slippers, and by the end, not even those. The shoehorn stayed on its nail through all of it, and I did not move it, and I did not think about not moving it, which is different. I gave up the job that autumn. I had already dropped my days by then, and it was not working, because dropping days means somebody else has to cover the rest, and there was nobody else. I had run that school kitchen most of my adult life. It did not pay much, and I was still paying into the pension, and I stopped paying into it, and that was that. Nobody asked me to. I want to be accurate. Nobody made me do a single thing. The visits thinned the way these things thin, which is to say gradually and with a reason every time. Gareth had the business. He had the drive, a long way each way, and he came less in the winter and then less in general. Nuala came at Christmas and for a week in the summer, and she was good when she came. She did the whole week properly. She did nights. And I did not keep score. I want to be honest about that, because it would be a better story if I had. I did not sit there totting them up. I noticed things, and then I stopped noticing them, which is what you do when noticing is not going to get you anything. The thing I did notice and did not say was the coat. Gareth never took it off. He would come in, sign the book, go into the front room, say a few things to Dad in the loud, clear voice people use on the very old, and then he would be in the kitchen asking me about the boiler service, coat on the whole time. I used to think that was just Gareth being Gareth. Restless, always with somewhere to be after this. I raised it once, in all that time. It was a Tuesday in the second winter, and Dad had had a bad night, and Gareth came late in the morning and was gone before I had finished the kettle, and I followed him out to the car and said something like, "It would help if you came a bit more." He said, "I'm not going to be made to feel guilty about geography." I went back inside and I did not raise it again. I would like to tell you that was strategy. It was not. It was that I had a wash on and he was awake and I could not carry it. Dad died in the early hours of a Thursday, and I was there, and Jackie came at 7 and made me a cup of tea in my own father's kitchen and sat with me while we waited. 44 months. I had slept in that house for every one of them. The funeral was fine. I mean that flatly. It was well attended, and the man from the paint place spoke, and it was fine. Gareth did the eulogy, and he was good at it. He is good at it. And near the end of it, he said the sentence, which was, "We looked after him at home, right to the end," which is what he wanted. We. I stood in the second row and I felt the word go past me, and I did not do anything about it, and afterwards 3 separate people told me what a lovely thing my brother had said. The will was straightforward. The house split 3 ways, equal thirds, no conditions. Dad had made it when Mum died and had never touched it. He also named me sole executor, which Gareth found out in that office, and I watched him take it in the way you take in a small stone in your shoe. Alan Prentice, who had held the will since before I was married, which is to say, since before a marriage that did not last and is not part of this story, gave me a plastic wallet of paperwork and said, "You'll get the whole file in due course. It's yours now, all of it. We just have to copy it first." I said thank you, and I put it in my bag, and I honestly did not think about that sentence again until the letter came. The letter came after Christmas. It was not from Gareth. It was from a firm in Chester, acting for Gareth and Nuala jointly, and it was polite the way those letters are polite, which is a kind of politeness with a cost per hour attached to it. It said their clients did not dispute the will. It said their clients wished to raise the question of an occupational rent. I had lived in the house for 44 months. They had put a monthly rent against every one of them, and the total came to just under £30,000, and they proposed that it be taken out of my third before the estate was divided. And then there was the sentence. It is accepted that our client's sister provided assistance. It should, however, be noted that she had no dependents and no separate household to maintain, and that the arrangement was of considerable financial benefit to her. I rang him, not the solicitor, him. I said, "Do you know what is in this letter?" And he said yes. Of course he did. He had been through it line by line, which I believed, because he would have. I said, "You have charged me rent for looking after Dad." And he said, in the voice he uses for explaining things to people who have not read the documentation, "You didn't give anything up. You had nothing to give up." I said that was probably fair, and I put the phone down on the arm of the chair, and I sat there with the lamp on most of the night. The folder was still in the house. Of course it was. Nobody clears a hall shelf that quickly. All of it was in there. Jackie's entries, the carers who came at the end, the physio, the chiropodist, the palliative team. And mine, because Jackie had asked me in that first week to write down what I did and when I did it, so the professionals coming in were not working blind, and I had done it every day because she asked me to, and because writing it down was the only part of that house that ever felt like a job. I sat down at the kitchen table and I counted. It took days, off and on. I am not a spreadsheet person. I did it with a notepad and a biro, the way Dad would have, and I checked it twice because I could hear Gareth's voice in my head telling me I had not checked it. The hours in that folder, mine only, not the professionals, not the nights I slept there without getting up, came to more than 10,000. That is most of a working day, every day, without a day off, for 44 months. And then, because it was in the same folder, and because by then I could not stop, I counted his. Gareth signed in 61 times. He did fill it in every single time. He had made the rule, and he kept it. And that is not a small thing about him. It is the truest thing about him. 61 visits. Put end to end, all of them together did not come to 2 days. 11 of those 61 have the same time written in both boxes, the same minute, in and out, in his handwriting. 11 times. He was not lying. That is the thing I want you to understand, because I sat with it for 2 days trying to make it a lie, and it will not be one. He was standing in the hall, filling in both boxes at once on his way past, because he already knew how long he was staying. That was the coat. Here is what I understood at the kitchen table, and it took me a fortnight and a biro to get to something this simple. They were not being greedy. Split between the two of them, it was not money that would change either of their lives, and Gareth earns more than his share of it in a season. It was never really about the money. They did not think I had given anything up. They thought I had been given somewhere to live. I did not go to a solicitor. I want to be clear that this was not restraint, it was arithmetic of a different kind. I had no income, and a third of a house I could not touch until it sold. What I did was photocopy the folder. All of it in the stationer's on the high street, over 2 afternoons. I paid for it at the counter in coins, and it is the only money I spent on any of this. Then I wrote 1 page and sent it to the firm in Chester, copied to Gareth and to Nuala at their home addresses, because I wanted it to arrive on a Saturday morning in a kitchen and not in an office. I told them I did not dispute their rent. It was about right for that house. I told them that the local authority publishes what it pays an hour for home care, and that I had used their figure and not one of my own, and that the hours recorded in the enclosed folder, in my handwriting, dated and countersigned by 2 district nurses and a palliative team, came to more than 10,000. At the council's own rate, that is £250,000. And then the only sentence in the letter that was mine rather than theirs. I wrote, "I am not asking for this, and I will not accept it. I am putting it next to your figure so that the 2 of them are on the same page, because I do not think they have ever been on the same page in anybody's head, including mine." I posted it the next morning. Alan Prentice's office sent the file the week after. The whole thing, going back to before I was born, because I was the executor and it was mine now, all of it, exactly as he had said in that office when I was not listening. I went through it on the kitchen floor with my back against the cupboard, mostly out of duty. Deeds, an old life policy, Mum's grant of probate, and a letter from my brother. It was written the autumn before Dad died, more than a year before any of this. 2 paragraphs, and perfectly courteous. My brother asked Mr. Prentice whether our father's will could still be varied given his condition, and what the position would be, in general terms, where one beneficiary had been living at the property without paying rent, more than a year before. I know exactly what I was doing the week he wrote it, because it was the week Dad could not be left, and I was upstairs stripping the bed for the second time that day. And under it, in Prentice's handwriting, a file note of 1 line. Client informed. Client did not wish to discuss the matter further. Client meaning my father. Somebody rang my dad, or sat with him, and told him his son had asked that question about him while he was still in the room to ask it about. And he said he did not want to talk about it. And then he did not talk about it, to me, not once, in a house where I was the only other person. He had all that time to tell me, and he used every day of it not telling me. I have decided that was him protecting me, and I am aware that I have decided it rather than found it out. The firm in Chester withdrew the claim. 3 sentences. Their clients had reflected and no longer wished to pursue the matter, and their clients reserved their position on costs, which made me laugh out loud in a kitchen on my own for the first time in about a year. The house went on in the spring and sold in the summer. 3 equal thirds, exactly as Dad wrote it. I took mine. I paid no rent. I did not take a penny more, and I never sent a second letter. Nuala rang me after it was over. She cried, and she said she had not read past the first page before she signed, and I asked her whether she had read it afterwards, and she said yes. So we were only ever talking about the order of things. I have not spoken to Gareth. That is not a position I am holding. There is just nothing that either of us has come up with to say. The clearance company inventoried the house before the sale. Every last thing in it, listed. I have still got the sheet. Gareth took the bureau and the clock. Nuala took the china and some of Mum's things, and everything else went. The shoehorn was not on it. It is on a nail by my own front door now, at shoulder height on my father, which is too high for me. I have not moved it. Before you go, I would like to know what you think, and I do read the comments in the first few days. Here is the question, and I do not have a tidy answer to it myself. I sent that letter with the 2 numbers in it, and it worked, and it cost me a brother. I could have said nothing, paid the rent out of my 3rd, and still had somebody to ring at Christmas. Plenty of people would say that is what a 3rd of a house is for. So, would you have sent the folder, or would you have paid the rent and kept the family? If this kind of story is what you came here for, the ones people do not usually say out loud, subscribe. There is a new one every week.